Hey Theater Inspires! Welcome to Make It Sparkle, a series to get ideas and inspiration for your theater and dance shows. This video is about directing in community and school theater, and it features Adam Delka. Adam is a theater teacher and a gifted professional actor and choreographer. He's directed and performed in many shows like The Wizard of Oz, Damn Yankees, Cabaret, Sweeney Todd, Once on This Island, and beyond. Adam also brings fresh insight, creativity, and humility to every project he works on. Hope you enjoy this and get some fresh ideas.
So first you decide on your time period, For us, we went with a Victorian England, latter Victorian, late 1800s, very early 1900s, because Victorian it's a large time period actually, and there's a lot of different styles in there, so you kind of have to narrow it down. And you do what you can to try to make it historically accurate as possible, but obviously you can't always do it to a T. Sometimes you have to fudge a little, which especially in high school. We picked a time period. We picked Victorian. With Sweeney, with my shows, I tend to over costume and have so many costume changes and love the spectacle of multiple looks on stage. But with Sweeney, actually, I found that most characters only needed one, maybe two costumes. So I really over-planned for costumes on this, but I didn't need to. And I found that I could do with a lot less than what I initially thought. Most of my characters, my ensemble especially, only ended up with one base costume, and they're wearing it for the entire show. There's a couple of characters. I added in some masquerade ball dancers, so they had a second costume, and those you can pull from kind of any time period prior to Renaissance, Rococo, whatever time periods you could pull, because it's a ball, it's a masquerade ball, so there was a costume ball, so it could be anything. And masks, we ended up doing some Venetian style jester masks for their masked ball. And then we did decide to do multiple looks for Mrs. Lovett, kind of as she progresses from, having no customers to a little bit more money, to a little bit more money, to a little bit more money, so that you see her kind of like dress up as the story unfolds. Toby has two costumes. Tobias Rag, name kind of implies rags, literally. So he's in pretty much tattered rags at the beginning, and then after he gets taken in by Mrs. Lovett and Mr. Todd, he gets a little nicer layer of clothes. Joanna has multiple looks. And then the beggar woman / Lucy, I decided to use her in the Poor Thing number, where we see her appear as young and beautiful, and it's kind of like a memory. So we see her in a very pristine white gown that's very cinched and tight with bustles in the back, and Todd kind of remembering what she was. And then of course we have the old hag, where she's all hunched over with layers and layers, and you don't see her face. But Judge Turpin, one costume. Beetle, one costume. Todd, only two costumes, one for Act 1 and one for Act 2. I found it to be much easier than what I anticipated. Long story short, we had almost 20-something totes full of fabric that was in storage here at the school, and we were cleaning out closets and doing all kinds of shuffling around to off-site storage unit this fall, and I said, we need to use some of this fabric. It's ridiculous that we have all this fabric, because you don't realize, after 15 years of doing this, how many pieces and bolts you just accumulate, and then they get tucked into the nether regions of your theater, and you don't have any idea what's there after a while. So we laid it all out on the stage, and I went through and I said, okay, this is enough. I looked for yardage. because we wanted to do custom made for certain characters, because I knew I didn't have in stock some of the things I would need. So I did have some help with some seamstresses to help make certain costumes. But I wanted to use what I had this go around. And in a lot of shows, I don't. I go out and I'll buy fresh fabric and start it from scratch. But we had so much fabric. I said, we have to make it work. Like, let's not spend money on fabric. I think we only bought a few yards of lining this go around, and then some lace trim. But the rest we had on hand, which is not normal. That is not my normal process. But for this show, that's what we did. And so we had a custom made out of the fabric we had on hand. I pulled color scheme for certain characters. We decided to put Todd in like darker reds, like blood red, wine, grays and blacks, like a smoky gray. Lovett, she's a little more colorful. So her costumes kind of run the gamut of bright blues to a little bit of yellows to even some reds. Even like this dirty olivey green brownish green color. Judge Turpin is kind of like a beige. We put him in a beige. The beetle we decided to put into like a green. Pirelli, we went super, super bright because he's so flamboyant and he's a spectacle and all on his own. I had this lime green. I don't know what I had. I had like 40 yards of lime green silk fabric. I was like, we're using it. And then I found this in our pile of fabric, this really beautiful crushed velvet bird pattern. I was like, oh, that's excellent. That'll fall into our kind of like caged bird theme that we're going for. To use like lining of a cape, and we designed it to look like a bolero, almost like a Spanish toreador kind of look. Lucy as her younger, more beautiful, innocent self, all in kind of like a crystally white, and Joanna in baby blues and baby pinks, kind of like the innocence, you know. And then Toby, obviously in kind of browns, rags, and Anthony in blues. So kind of each character has its own kind of color scheme, and then the ensemble kind of pulling from that entire palette of colors. Sketches, sometimes. Sometimes we do sketches, sometimes it just kind of depends on time frame. I tend to go off of patterns. So if I know that I want a certain pattern made and I have that pattern, then I'll just lay that pattern out and I'll pull the fabric and put it with that pattern, so I know this is what I want, and I can hand that over to a seamstress to build for me. And sometimes we do sketches, you know. Sometimes if it's like, I need this sleeve off of this pattern and this bodice and this skirt, then it does kind of need a sketch, but also goes down to time. Like, what do you have time for? Costumes, I'll often do Pinterest boards, or, you know, make some sort of like collage slide where you see all kinds of different inspiration, what we're looking for. I always dream big, and I'm really happy when I get those things, when those dreams come true with costumes. But I also know the reality of like time frame and cost and materials. Sometimes those dreams, they have to be pulled down to a reality, and that's okay. I think that's just a part of the process. I think I talked with you, like, let's go big, let's dream big, and then we'll bring it down if we need to what fits our world and our budget, and what's realistic for us. And that's theater. Yeah, so I worked with my technical director here at the school, Mr. Nathan Stanland, to develop a structural set that was, a lot of times we've built sets that were very realistic, and it seemed as if it was like a real place. I said, okay, let's take that idea, but maybe take about 50% of that realism away, and let's create more of like a bare bones look, partially because we're using projections. So I wanted to be able to see through walls more to our back projection screen, which is our cyclorama. That's where we're projecting to. So I wanted to see more of that, and with the projections, possibly having maybe a little more realism on it, to help establish a world kind of in the background. But because that would help transition the audience's mind to actually more where we're at. So if we're in the parlor, if we're in the bakehouse, if we're in the pie shop, you'll see that in the background, but the set itself is not super specific. So we've got these walls that are up, but we have these walls that are very skeletal, and they look like almost like the ruins of after a bomb went off in a city, and it looks like bars that you'd see on a bird cage, which is kind of what I was going for. I don't know if the audience is going to understand that. I don't know if they'll get that. And sometimes they don't have to get that or understand that. But that's my general idea of what I was going for.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you've directed or taught theater and have ideas or tips to help other artists make their shows a success, please be sure to include it in the comments below.